Hello, I am back this time with my recap and discussion of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which I freely admit is a weird and bizarre story, but has managed to make its way into popular culture. I'm a huge video game, fantasy, sci-fi horror person, so I figured I'd throw up an image of the Green Knight from Warhammer just to keep things interesting, just to change things up, varieties, the spice of life, all that type of stuff. So remember, the big thing I want us to keep in mind talking about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, chivalry, and how chivalry is this attempt to put a Christian face, a nice, peaceful, tranquil, good covering over the profession of being a knight, which was a pretty brutal military war, killing, slaying, pillaging profession. Big thing to keep in mind, when does chivalry work? When does chivalry not work? And that's going to kind of be the baseline for this discussion of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, with a couple other interesting things thrown in there because it's my class and I get to talk about interesting things. So, first thing we want to talk about is Camelot. Like I said, this is a King Arthur story, but kind of not really. This story of a Green Knight who gets beheaded, probably pre-existed King Arthur, and somewhere along the way it got wrapped up into the Arthurian legend. Big thing to take away. Story opens Christmas, New Year's feast, and it's a party in Camelot. Like, life is great in Camelot. Camelot is this idealized, wonderful, magical, beautiful place. Plenty to eat, shelter, it's safe, it's a huge castle, it's protected. If you read the description, I'm not going to read it to you right now, but there are tapestries on the wall, gold and jewels everywhere. The drinks are flowing, people are partying. Guinevere's sitting at the table, and she's beautiful, and she's basically part of the scenery. Long story short, it's South Beach. Life in Camelot is wonderful. It's beautiful. It's a 24/7 party. It's amazing. Side note, they're not sitting at a round table. I know King Arthur gets associated with the round table, but they're actually not sitting at a round table here. Here's the thing. Do you think life in the Middle Ages was really like Camelot? No. Camelot is a fantasy. Life in the Middle Dark Ages was brutal. Castles were not this elaborate. Castles were barely, there were stone structures that were not, I mean, they were big castles, but they weren't Camelot castles. Um, Food was stuff to come by, even if you were a king. Like this is an idealization. And check out Arthur as king. Read you a couple things that Arthur does. First, he waits till everybody is served until he eats. Do you think that's how your typical king operated? No, I definitely do not think so. I think he would eat till his full, and maybe if there was food left over, other people would get to eat. Camelot is an idealized kingdom. Arthur is an idealized king. Big takeaway. This was not what life was really like. Okay, so into this South Beach party, a free-flowing drink, and a nice king who's joking around with everybody. This gentleman rolls in. Green Knight. Well, let's talk about the Green Knight because he's like obviously his name is in the title. He's the most interesting character in this. First, let's talk about we gotta talk about this. He's green, like the fact that he is green. You know, we've been talking about a mixture of pagan and Christian elements in this course so far. Remember, this is 1400, so we're pretty much firm. The pendulum's almost totally struck to Christianity. But remember, go back far enough, the Celtics and the Druids were into nature worship. And I think you could take the Green Knight one of two ways. There's a pagan way of taking him and a Christian way of taking him. Pagan way, well, he's green, which is very much associated with nature. He enters with like a sprig or a branch of holly, which again is associated with nature. And remember, he gets his head chopped off. He doesn't die, but he basically regenerates and comes to life. And isn't that really what nature does? It dies in the winter, and then it comes back to life in the springtime. So I think you could take the Green Knight as a pagan element. you could also take him in a Christian way too. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the color green gets often associated with jealousy. They call jealousy a green-eyed monster, or whatever you want to say. Um, well, what does the Green Knight have to be jealous of? Well, I think he is probably jealous of the perfect South Beach partying lifestyle that's going on in Camelot. So, Green Knight, pagan, nature, Christian, jealousy. And he bursts in, and he doesn't even recognize Arthur, which is like a diss, which is a slap in the face. Arthur is like the man, the most famous king in the history of kings. And the Green Knight's like, who's in charge here? And Arthur's like, you don't know, I'm Arthur, man. I'm in charge. I mean, come on. And then the Green Knight starts throwing around insults, and he says something to the effect of, "You're all beardless children." And is he making a comment or a critique on their facial hair or their, like, their beard game? No, not really. He's basically saying they are immature. He's saying they are untested. He's saying they haven't seen the real vicious, brutal world. They're still young. They're still kids. They live in this protected Camelot place where nothing bad ever happens. Green Knight's from the real world, man. Green Knight's lived in it. Green Knight's seen it, and that's his insult. And so he throws out the challenge, and the challenge is, yo, listen, I'm gonna give one of you guys my axe. You can swing, chop my head off, and if by some miracle I survive, in a year and a day's time, you got to come find me at my crib at the Green Chapel, and I get to return the favor. And Arthur's like, okay, dude. I guess I'll do it. I'll chop your head off. I'll do it. I chop heads all the time. I'm Arthur. Sir Gawain intervenes and is like, listen, this just in case something's off here, just in case something's not right, because I don't know if people just roll in and offer to get their heads chopped off. I'm the least valuable here. The only reason I am a knight is because I'm related to you. I don't really bring that much to the table, round table, square table, otherwise. Let me do it. And Arthur's like, okay. Before we talk about what actually happens, it's worth noting that the Green Knight presents this as a game. And if you're living in Camelot, this perpetual South Beach party, you're probably playing a lot of games. Here's the difference. This game the Green Knight is offering, chopping people's heads off, that's a game with real life or death consequences. Stuff matters. It's the real time. Games people play in Camelot, there's a reference to like a kissing game they play. There aren't real stakes there. Nothing bad's going to happen if you lose. If you lose the Green Knight's game, bad stuff happens. And so Gawain takes the axe and chops the Green Knight's head off. Green Knight's head goes rolling away. Green Knight stands up like nothing, picks up his head, and the head starts talking. Haha, don't forget, in a year's time, you have to come and find me and chop your head off. Get this interlude, and if we were in in-person class, we talk about how it's actually a pretty beautiful discussion of the progression of the seasons. And year goes by, it's about Halloween-ish. Sir Gawain decides, I gotta do it, man. I gave my word that I'm gonna let this dude try to chop my head off. Alright, I'm gonna go. You get this long description of his armor, but I want to focus on what is painted on his shield. On one side of the shield is the Virgin Mary. On the other side is what's more interesting to me. It's a five-pointed star, pentacle, pentagram, whatever you want to call it. I think one of the questions I asked in the interactive video or something is, does that strike you as a pagan or Christian element? And I think most people's automatic reaction is it's a pagan element. I mean, if you study Wicca, that's the symbol of Wicca. It's a five-pointed star. Yes, it's very much a pagan element. But as we've seen, a recurring theme this semester, early British literature takes pagan ideas, themes, images, the Green Knight, the troll, Grendel and Beowulf, and repurposes them in light of Christianity. And what they end up doing with the five-sided star is the Pearl poet, the poet who wrote Sir Gawain the Green Knight, changes that into kind of a Christian symbol by saying that each point on the star represents one of the, it's not called this, but for our purposes we'll call it one of the sacred fives in Christianity. The five senses, the five wounds of Christ, the five sacred joys, and then they start getting desperate. The five fingers on the hands with you interact with the world. The five elements of chivalry we talked about in the intro video to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So, in and of itself, five-pointed star, very much a pagan symbol, but it gets reworked into a Christian symbol by saying each of the 5 points represents something very Christian. And for me, this is the most interesting part in the poem. This is the poem, the point of the poem in a nutshell. Sir Gawain leaves the walls of Camelot and goes into the real world. And this is the stuff he has to deal with. I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to actually read some of this stuff. Now with serpents he wars, now with savage wolves, now with wild men of the woods that watch from the rocks, both with bulls and with bears and with boars besides, and giants that came gibbering from the jagged steppes. He's got to deal with wild animals. I mean, if there were any wild animals that he saw in Camelot, it was probably in the Camelot Zoo. None of them were going to chow down on Sir Gawain. He's got to deal with wolves and bears and boars, giants. Giants! There was none of this in Camelot. He is knee-deep in the real world. Real threats. Animals. Vicious animals. He also has to deal with this. When the cold, clear rains rushed from the clouds and froze before they could fall to the frosty earth, near slain by the sleet he sleeps in his irons, more nights than enough among knacked rocks, where clattering from the crest the cold stream ran and hung in the hard icicles. He's got to deal with weather now, like real bad cold, sleet, rain weather. Like in Camelot, he was in his cushy, he's a knight. He's Arthur's nephew. He's got a sweet room in the castle. He's got a fire. This dude never had to deal with the cold and the rain and the sleet and the elements. This is the real world. This is not the sheltered area of Camelot. And this is kind of my point. This is kind of the point of the poem. It's easy to be chivalrous. It's easy to be good and friendly and pious and chaste and virtuous when you have nothing to worry about and you're safe and you're warm and your life isn't in danger. Get thrown into the real world where there are real world problems like animals and the elements, and we're going to see some other real world problems. Becoming chivalrous becomes much harder. It's easy to do the right thing when life is easy. It becomes harder to do the right thing when life is difficult. And I think at the end of the day, that's the point of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. But we'll see that a little bit more. So it's Christmas Eve, and he really, really needs a place to pray because Christmas is important. And he falls to the earth, and he starts praying super, super, super hard. And almost out of nowhere, a castle appears. And he goes into the castle. And the man of the castle, Baranek, welcomes him in. And since he's a knight of the round table, he kind of is a minor celebrity. And the man, Baranek, is like, yeah, no, come on in, pray at midnight mass with us, you can hang out. And Gawain's like, I'll just come in for a hot minute, I'll pray. I gotta go, I got this appointment with this Green Knight. And Baranek's like, oh, the Green Knight, man? Like, he's like 2 minutes up the road. You hang out here for a little while, stay a couple days. We'll have some fun. And Sir Gawain's like, yeah, fine, we'll do it. Then Baranek offers a game. Another game. See, I told you game stories are kind of popular back in the Middle Ages. And the game that Sir Baranek offers to play is kind of weird. If someone offered this to me, I'd be sketched out. He's like, listen, me and my guys are going to go out and hunt. Whatever we bring back from the hunt, we'll share with you, as long as whatever you get in the castle while we're gone, you share with me when I get back. And Sir Gawain's like, that's sort of weird, but I'm not going to be rude. Let's play. Guy goes out to hunt. First thing he hunts is deer. Grand scheme of things, compared to the other things he hunts, deer is the easiest prey. But I want to pay attention to how the hunting party gets the deer. They take the weakest and youngest deer, separates it from the herd, and attacks it. Does that sound familiar? Sound like it can connect to anything else in the story? If you said that's exactly what happened to Sir Gawain, you'd be right. He is the youngest, weakest. He even said he's the weakest knight way back at the beginning. Separated from Camelot, separated from Arthur, separated from his boys, and the real world attacks him. So, while Baranek and his guys are out hunting, Gawain's hanging out in his room. The lady of the castle comes in, and this is where stuff gets a little bomb, chick, bomb. You know what I'm talking about. She comes in his room, naked, like straight up naked, threatens to tie him up and bind his hands. It's like 50 Shades of Grey, well, I guess 50 Shades of Green in this case, but she's trying to hardcore seduce him. She is trying to seduce him. What is being tempted? His code of chivalry. Remember, there's the idea that a knight is supposed to maybe pledge himself to a noble lady, and she's the lady of the castle, but is never, ever, ever supposed to consummate it. And to his credit, he holds out. All he does is give her a kiss. Simple kiss. Simple kiss. Baranek comes back, and you actually get a pretty brutal description of when Baranek gets back. You get a pretty brutal description of hunting and skinning the deer. If you ever saw Game of Thrones, where Tywin Lannister skins a deer, it always reminds me of that. And how does that relate to what we've been talking about? Well, in Camelot, I don't think Sir Gawain ever had to see a deer being gutted and skinned and chopped up. It just appeared on his plate like, he was at a restaurant. The reality, the gritty reality of the world is probably hidden from them. So Baranek comes back and is like, yo, I got some deer. We're going to chow down on this. What did you get while I was gone? And Sir Gawain, straight up kisses Sir Baranek and is like, yeah, don't ask me how I got it, but here's a kiss. Second animal that gets hunted is a boar, which is ratcheting up the difficulty. I've played a fair amount of World of Warcraft. There's a reason they send you out to hunt boars. They're sort of dangerous. They gore you. If you go to the Odyssey, if you've ever read the Odyssey, Odysseus actually has a massive boar wound across his chest. So boars are no joke. And if you pick up what's going on the hunt is paralleling what's going on with Sir Gawain and the lady of the house. She's hunting in her own way, Sir Gawain, and because the boar is a harder challenge for the hunting party, the lady of the house ratchets up her challenge a little bit, and she starts kind of challenging Sir Gawain's chivalry. And she starts saying, well, a real, true, virtuous, chivalrous knight would give the lady whatever she wanted. Well, here's what I mean. Just like chivalry falls apart in the real world, chivalry and courtly love sort of fall apart. If a knight is supposed to do and win whatever a noble lady wants, what if the noble lady what if that is Sir Gawain? He can't give her what she wants, but he's supposed to give her what she wants, but he can't. Get what I'm saying? It sort of falls apart. It's like dividing by zero. You can't do it. And Sir Gawain manages to get himself out of this by giving her 2 kisses. Sir Baranek comes back, and he's like, hey, we got boar. We're having bacon tonight. What did you get? Gives him 2 kisses. Then we have the third hunt. And it's a fox. And, well, what do foxes have the reputation for? Foxes are clever. Foxes are sly. Foxes are cunning. Also, fun fact, my ex-girlfriend's British, and she's told me, I didn't believe her until she actually sent me a video. They have wild foxes running around London. Like we have stray cats, they have wild foxes running through the street. Point being, if Baranek and the hunting party are hunting a sly animal, the lady of the house is going to be a little bit more sly. And the night before, it's getting closer to when Sir Gawain has to fight the Green Knight, and he's having nightmares. He's up screaming, scared, having nightmares. lady of the house comes back in, still tries to seduce him. Sir Gawain's like, yo, no, I got bigger problems to worry about. So she stops trying to physically seduce him and changes tactics. She wants to give him a gift. And the first gift she offers him is a ring. And Sir Gawain's like, no, 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 I'm not taking your ring. And think about it. A ring is a really, really intimate present. You give a ring when you marry someone, when you're engaged to someone. A ring is a really loaded question. I'm not saying to go out and do this because this is a horrible idea. Let me say this, but go say if you're a guy, you've been dating a girl for like a month, give her a ring. See what happens. She will freak out because rings imply intimacy. Rings imply like a deep emotional connection. There's another symbolic level to them we don't have to get into, but a ring is a really intimate gift, and Sir Gawain is like, no, just no, not happening. If a ring is an intimate gift, there is only one article of clothing that I could think is even more intimate. And depending on what translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight you're using, sometimes it's translated as sash, sometimes it's translated as garter, sometimes it's translated as girdle, other times it's straight up translated as underwear. We'll say girdle, or we'll say garter because it's somewhere between girdle and underwear. Like that's if you go to a wedding and the guy takes off just figure out where a garter. It's basically underwear. Okay, we'll call it underwear because it's basically underwear. She offers Sir Gawain her underwear essentially, and Sir Gawain's like, no, 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 no. I said no to a ring. I'm not taking your. I'm just not doing it. But it's magic underwear, and it will make you impervious to the Green Knight, and that changes everything. He didn't give in to sexual temptation, not at all, but the temptation to save his life, that he gives into. His life is threatened. He was up screaming about it the night before. And when you're faced with real world problems like death, all of a sudden it becomes real easy to put your chivalry, to put your morals, to put what you're supposed to do in a drawer. And I think sort of the message is that that's kind of okay. When you're facing an undead death knight, it's okay to be freaked out. And it's human. It's very human to make moral compromises and make moral negotiations to save your life. You don't need to be totally and completely honorable when you're facing some ridiculous death knight. So, doesn't give into sexual temptation, we'll give him that. But the temptation to save your life, the temptation not to die, that's what he gives into. And he takes the magic underwear, and he got three kisses from the lady of the house. When the guy comes back after hunting foxes, he gives the 3 kisses, and but he doesn't drop his drawers and give his underwear because he got underwear. And long story short, it's time to go off and face the Green Knight. And a guide is kind of like guiding him to where the Green Knight is. And the guide is like, yo, listen, dude, you're about to face the freaking Green Knight. If you want to bounce and go the other direction, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not saying anything. And Sir Gawain is like, no, it's the noble right thing to do. I gave my word, and my word is my bond. I'm going to face the Green Knight. You can ask yourself if he really means that, or if he's like, I've got magic underwear, Green Knight can't hurt me. Maybe, I don't know which one it is. Maybe it's a little bit of each. He goes off, and he offers his head down to the Green Knight, and the Green Knight like fakes once, and he flinches. Green Knight fakes again, and he flinches, and then the Green Knight swings, and he cuts Sir Gawain's cheek. And the big twist, the big surprise ending of the story is Sir Baranek, the man of the castle, was the Green Knight, and the first 2 fakes were because he was honest with the first 2 with the 1 kiss and the 2 kiss, and the cut on the cheek was because he didn't give the underwear. but he did give the 3 kisses, so he was not totally honest. And they end up joking and talking, and they don't become friends, but like they part on relatively good terms. Sir Gawain goes back to King Arthur in Camelot and tells his story, and they tell you that from that point on, all the knights of the Round Table wore like a green sash on their shoulders. They say it's to commemorate Sir Gawain's victory, but I don't think it was really a victory. I think more the reason they're wearing the green sash on their arms is a reminder that I guess that sometimes it's okay to be not totally perfect and not totally fearless. There's a difference between life in protected Camelot. It's a reminder of humility, a reminder of mortality, because there's a big difference between being chivalrous within the protected walls of Camelot and being thrown into the real world where there's the real possibility of death, cold, starvation, wolves, giants, real life problems. And that's why I think Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is important, because it really pokes holes in this idea of chivalry and gives you the idea that chivalry is a fantasy. Chivalry is a construct of humans. It's easy to do the right thing in, say, a safe, controlled environment. It's much harder to do the right thing in a difficult, nasty, vicious, brutal world. And the reality of life in the Middle and Dark Ages was it wasn't Camelot. It was much scarier. I think the famous quote was, "It's nasty, Brutus, in short." And that's what Sir Gawain and the Green Knight reminds us of. And that's Sir Gawain and the Green Knight for you. Next thing we're covering is Canterbury Tales, and like I said, I'm going to apologize for that right now because basically going to be talking about a big giant list of people, but we got to do it, so we're going to. See you next time.